Hi guys, welcome to another LivinginSAtv video. David here. Today we are going to learn of how it is to live in Antarctica. So I'm going to interview Jonathan Ward, which is the data acquisition engineer at SANSA at the Hermanus base, and we're going to learn more about it, and I'm so eager to show you guys this conversation so we can learn more. And you know what? Once again, this video will blow your mind. Hi guys, welcome to another LivinginSAtv podcast. David here. Today we have a very special guest, and his name is Jonathan Ward, and he works for SANSA as an engineer of data acquisition. Let me tell you guys a little bit about Jonathan, but first, how are you, Jonathan?
Hi David, I'm doing well.
Very nice to see you. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation to come to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. Okay, let me tell you guys a little bit about Jonathan. So Jonathan Ward manages engineering and data acquisition at the South African National Space Agency, aka SANSA, at the Hermanus base on the Western Cape. His unit is responsible for supporting SANSA's instrumentation network located across Africa, Antarctica, and the Southern Ocean. Jonathan holds a master's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Cape Town. His specialized areas of study are in radar, remote sensing, high-frequency electromagnetics, and space applications. Jonathan Ward is a veteran of the South African National Antarctica Program, or SANAP, and overwintered at SANAE 4 in 2011-2012 season, and visited the continent for 3 relief voyages between 2013 and 2015. Jonathan, your bio is amazing.
Thanks. It sounds very fancy, David, but sort of what it means really is that sort of we play with a lot of very expensive, fancy toys for the space agency, and we collect data, and that data is used for research and for products and services in service of our country and of our continent.
Very nice. Okay, now let's go to the nice part, which are the questions. So the first question will be, why do we need a base in Antarctica?
Okay, it's a very good first question, David, and it's a little bit of an interesting one to answer because I would say there are probably a few reasons. I think, to start, the first reason is for scientific purposes. If we go back all the way to the Antarctic Treaty, the ethos of the treaty, which was signed by a number of countries, including South Africa. South Africa is an original signatory of the Antarctic Treaty. The premise behind the treaty was that Antarctica would be used for peaceful and for scientific purposes. So to capitalize on that, SANSA and South Africa want to be able to use Antarctica for peaceful scientific purposes. And for SANSA, this is a very interesting part of the world because we are studying space, and more importantly, we want to know what is the impact of the sun, what is the impact of things that are happening in space on the Earth, on the Earth's upper atmosphere, on the Earth's magnetic field, and also the technological systems that we have both in space and on the ground. So this is really our purpose for wanting to be in Antarctica, and I'll explain a little bit more maybe later on in this interview of sort of why we're there and what specifically we're doing. But in answering your question, yeah, we want to be in Antarctica for science. South Africa and also Cape Town is what we call a gateway city to Antarctica. What this means is that sort of we have a port that's sort of the closest to one of the edges of Antarctica, although we are sort of nearly 3,500 kilometers away. It seems like it's far away, but if you look at what other countries have Antarctic programs in Europe, across the world, in order for them to do logistics, for ships to travel to Antarctica from their countries, the closest port of call to the area of Antarctica known as Queen Maud Land or Droning Maud Land is Cape Town. So strategically, South Africa will want to maintain its status as a gateway city to Antarctica, and therefore it's important that we have a presence in Antarctica as well. And thirdly, I would say to support the Antarctic Treaty, which, as I mentioned earlier, we're one of the original signatories of. We need to maintain a presence in Antarctica because there's a big portion of that treaty speaks to the preservation of the environment. So by having a presence in Antarctica, we are able to monitor and to evaluate other participating countries and ensure that Antarctica is used for the purposes that we all promise to use it for, and that the environment is maintained and remains unspoiled.
Wow.
So there you go.
Perfect.
So yeah, there are many.
That was exactly what I wanted to hear. Okay, so the second question will be, why are we the only country in Africa with a base in Antarctica? What makes us special?
Okay, well, like I mentioned before, the gateway city status in Cape Town obviously makes us very special in terms of our access to Antarctica. We are also very lucky that we have an amazing polar resupply and logistics vessel, the SA Agulhas 2, which amongst other things is a icebreaker, a floating laboratory, a hotel for scientists and guests, a fuel tanker, a cargo ship. It's all of these amazing things, and that allows us to go from Cape Town to Antarctica once a year, but also as often as we can afford. So obviously the biggest obstacle to a lot of countries having a presence in Antarctica is the cost. So running these logistical voyages, having very fancy state-of-the-art research vessels, it all costs money. So I would sort of think that this could be one of the major obstacles in terms of other countries perhaps having a presence in Antarctica. But I would say because we're one of the closest, because of our gateway status, this gives us an advantage. And yeah, I think sort of the support that we have in the country sort of under the South African National Antarctic Program is also very good. We've got the Department of Environment, Forest and Fisheries that play a leading role in our Antarctic program. We've got the National Research Foundation under the Department of Science and Technology that does sort of world-class science, not only in space science. I'm obviously biased because I'm coming from SANSA, so we're doing a lot of space science, but we've got the South African Weather Services, we've got the National Defence Force, which drive our vehicles and look after our vehicles. So we've got all of these supporting entities that come under our program that make it work, that make it viable and stuff, yeah. And this, I think, sort of still needs to be well established in other countries before they can have a presence in Antarctica, yeah. And we've been doing it for over 50 years, so we're also good at doing it. New players to the game sort of might find it a bit sort of hard, but yeah, we've had over 50 years to to find our feet and to do this, yeah. Well, so we're in a good position.
Great stuff. Okay, so let's go to our third question. In South Africa, where is your base located? Like you said before.
In South Africa, the South African National Space Agency.
Mm-hmm. So where you guys have bases? You said already Hermanas, okay. Cape Town, what else?
Okay, so the South African National Space Agency is actually split into a number of different programs that operate out of a handful of sites in South Africa. So the space science program, which is the program that I am part of and work for, is operated out of the Hermanus facility, which is in the Western Cape. We also have other programs such as Earth observation, which is run out of our campus, which is in Pretoria. We also have the space engineering program office, which is also run out of the Pretoria campus, as well as an enterprise office, which runs out of Pretoria. Then we have our space operations program, and this is run out of our site in Hartbeespoort, which is about 45 minutes north and west of Pretoria. Yeah, so we sort of a little bit spread out, but Hermanus is the only facility in the Western Cape. The other work sites are all up north in Pretoria.
Perfect. Okay, so let's go to the next question. What is the difference between the SANAP and the SANAE?
Okay, so the SANAP, okay, which stands for the South African National Antarctic Program, is the overarching program that we operate when we go to Antarctica, but it's a lot more than that. It's sort of actually all of the remote islands and bases that we have under the program. So this includes Gough Island in the Southern Ocean, as well as Marion Island in the Southern Ocean. It includes the Antarctic base. It includes the Polar Resupply and Logistics Vessel, SA Agulhas 2. It includes all of the research programs and logistics programs, basically everything under one umbrella. This is the SANAP. Then the SANAE, which is the South African National Antarctic Expedition, this refers specifically to the Antarctic expedition, the Antarctic bases, and the Antarctic expedition members that are a part of the teams that go down to Antarctica. Yeah, but SANAE is part of the SANAP. That's
Very
how
well.
it all works.
Very well. Okay, let's go to the next question. How are Antarctica trips planned?
Okay, so the logistical side of the SANAP is actually managed by the Department of Environment, Forest and Fisheries. They have a directorate called Oceans and Coasts, and they are responsible for the planning, the logistics for the SANAP program. So usually this happens well in advance, where sort of the voyage to Antarctica will be scheduled. Then sort of regular planning meetings will happen closer to the time. The researchers, for example, would have undergone a separate process to get SANAP approval to do research in Antarctica. So they will then start getting their teams and their projects organized, and then closer to the time, there will be logistics planning, where sort of everyone will essentially come together to make sort of what resources and logistics they need known to the department. The department can then go ahead and try and arrange all of that. Then, you know, we have to make sure that the ship is available. Then we have to load everything onto the ship, including the overwintering team. So these are the people that we need to man the SANAE base 365 days a year. So when sort of everybody has gone down during the summer, which is the warm months, and they've done their science and they've done their maintenance and they've visited the base, they all then get back on the ship and go home. And then the overwintering personnel have to look after all the experiments and look after the base for the rest of the year. So this sort of will include all the recruitment for those people as well, you know, and this can take up to a year in advance to plan. Yeah. And then once this is all organized, then the voyage will take place. Yeah. And it's usually around three months. I think the last voyage, I think, to Antarctica was about 70 days, including the ship going and doing experiments and including the land expedition to Antarctica as well. Yeah, so there's a lot happening logistically and a lot of planning that has to that has to be done to take place so that we can ensure that we can get the most science or the most impact out of a single voyage. So this is done collaboratively, but run by the Department of Environment, Forest and Fisheries, to make sure that it all gets done and gets done properly.
Very interesting. Okay, let's go to another question, or the sixth question, which is, how is a typical day in Antarctica, especially in total darkness during the winter? How does that change your life?
Okay, all right. Yeah, so I think you sort of already understand that Antarctica is a very different place to the rest of the world. I think a lot of people that sort of are maybe living in the Northern Hemisphere are used to this sort of time of a lot of darkness or a lot of daylight, especially when you get to sort of the peak of your summer or winter seasons. In Antarctica, this is the most extreme because we sort of are near the pole, which means that there is a period in the year where we have 24 hours daylight and another period of the year where we have 24 hours of darkness. So when we arrive in Antarctica, we arrive in the summer, and sort of around the 22nd of December, we have our longest day. And for a lot of this time, we're able to work 24/7. There's daylight 24/7 of the day. And yeah, this means it's very hard to, if you're outside, to get tired and to want to fall asleep. And so, we're able to work throughout the whole day. The weather is also the warmest, and the wind is the kindest. But when we go into the winter, the temperatures drop down to very low temperatures. I mean, I've been there where sort of without wind chill factor, the thermometer's sitting at -40 dry bulb, and then you add 20 knots of wind, which is actually not that much wind for Antarctica, and we're measuring -60, -70 degrees Celsius on the thermometer. So just that extreme temperature drop can sort of make your life very difficult, especially if you need to go and work outside. To make water, for example, you need to go outside, you've got to put ice into a smelter, and you need this to survive. Yes, and then of course you get the 24 hours of darkness, which sort of plays quite interesting tricks on you psychologically, because now your body is never sure when it's time to sleep. So this sort of makes your sleeping patterns a little bit interesting, and it's hard to sort of keep a good rhythm in terms of sleep. And this sort of combination of darkness and coldness can actually give rise to a condition called T3 hyperthyroidism. And because your body is creating hormones all of the time, your thyroid produces this T3, and amongst other things that this hormone is responsible for in your body, it regulates body temperature. So when you go into the extreme cold and you've been isolated for a long time, experiencing some sleeplessness because of the total darkness, then this condition can manifest. And basically what happens is that your muscles absorb too much of this T3 hormone to keep your body temperature regulated, that some of its other functions, such as your short-term memory, then get a little bit by the wayside. And so people that are heavily affected by this condition develop what's called the Antarctic stare, where they kind of just zone out, and they kind of, you catch them just looking into space. And obviously this can also lead to a lot of forgetfulness. So you might walk into a room and you will forget the reason that you came to that room. So you'll go back to your room, and then on the way there, you'll remember why you went to the kitchen in the first place. And so you see people wandering around aimlessly, not really knowing what they are doing. Yeah, and so there's some very funny consequences of this, but it's not a problem. And usually once you get into better sleep rhythm and it starts getting daylight again, then and it gets a little bit warmer, then you just recover naturally from it. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, this is besides, you know, like the other psychological conditions from the isolation that one can sort of suffer from. My advice, you know, to any future Antarctic overwinters is that you need a lot of routine in your life. You know, you need to keep busy, exercise. You know, if you've got hobbies, you know, if you like play guitar, or you know, if you build puzzles or models, you know, keep your mind busy. You know, read books, all of that kind of stuff, and this can all help to get you through the long winter, the dark months. Yeah.
Wow. That's really, really amazing. Okay, so what the next question will be, what is inside of the SANAE base?
Okay, well, the base has to be entirely self-sufficient, and we have to be able to survive there for up to 1 year without resupply. So the short answer to your question is that it has everything that you need to survive. Yeah, so the base is split into 3 modules. You've got sort of an area that's got the rooms and the science labs, and then you've got another section which is sort of your kitchen, your dining rooms, you know, some more living space, fully equipped kitchen with all of the things that you need, you know, to do cooking and, you know, keep yourselves well fed and healthy. It's all there. And then in the same module, there is a library with lots of books, lots of games, lots of videos, DVDs. There's a media room, which has, it's like a cinema. It's got nice couches and a projector with a big screen. There's some of this is where the people bring, you know, their gaming console, like their PS4, their Xbox, you know, to play games on the big screen. And then there's what we call like the technical wing, which is all of the workshops. Here we've got the diesel-powered electricity generators. We've got a sewage plant, which processes all of the black water and basically turns it into clean gray water again. Then we've got waste storage. So it's not like it's not like here in Hermanus that sort of, you know, when I've been working in my kitchen and I've got a whole bunch of things to throw away, I just throw it in the bin, and every Thursday I leave it outside and someone comes and collects it. That doesn't happen in Antarctica. So every single bit of waste that is produced inside that base has to be returned to South Africa. Yeah. So we separate all of our wastes, you know, paper, glass, metal, all the kinds of waste. I won't go into too much detail there. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but we bring it all back to South Africa. So there's a special waste room for doing all of that. And then of course, we've got the technical workshops. We've got the hangar. We've got tanks to store fresh water. We've got big fridges, big store rooms. It's like a little, it's almost like a mini spa, like a mini Pick and Pay, where you walk through the aisles. It's fully stocked with the food for the year. Yeah, and this is and this is all of the things that's inside the base. So you want for nothing when you're in there. Maybe you miss your favorite Netflix show or something like that, but essentially everything that you need to survive is provided for at the base. We even have a very nice bar, which is called the Sastrugi Inn, and it's a very well-known and popular bar within the SANAP program, but also amongst the other bases that are in Antarctica. The South African base is well known for its hospitality, and so we tend to get a lot of visitors to the base, and they always ask us about this Sastrugi Inn. Yeah, and they want to come and visit this Sastrugi Inn. Yeah, so we're not only known for our good science and everything, but we're known for our hospitality and for being a good host, to all the participants that are in Antarctica under the treaty.
Very, very interesting. Okay, so next question. What secrets and curiosities Antarctica holds? The most uncommon ones. What's beneath the surface of all that ice? Is it another world? What you guys have found there that was so interesting?
That's a good question. I think sort of conspiracy theories aside, it's actually a very barren place. You walk outside, of course, the landscapes are very beautiful, very unspoilt, but Antarctica is basically a desert. In fact, there's hardly sort of any meaningful precipitation throughout the year. So it's essentially just millions of years of accumulation of ice, of fresh water ice. In fact, Antarctica holds something like 70% of the Earth's fresh water on its surface. Yeah. But like as you mentioned, like what is under the ice? So of course, Antarctica is a continent. So there is actually a continental shelf. There is actually rocks and there's ground underneath all of that ice, which can sometimes be kilometers thick. So, what sort of this all means is that sort of Antarctica actually contains a very good historical record of what the conditions on the planet has been like over all these sort of millions of years, trapped inside those layers of ice that's been accumulated, like all this time. And sort of they've, discovered lakes under the ice. They've made very interesting discoveries by doing ice core drilling and taking ice core samples from kilometers down under the ice. And this has given us a lot of insight into sort of what the planet was like millions of years ago before, we had, before we were taking our own measurements. We can go back and see what the conditions was like by examining what was in the ice all that time ago. So yeah, it sort of holds all of those secrets under the ice. Trying to think what other
I think the secrets volcano, it's crazy to think also the volcano, the blood falls. People already, I actually made a video about this, and people also said that some entrances to the volcano is like the temperature at the entrance of those places is extremely hot. So all these types of interesting things, kind of thinking that a continent that goes below minus 70 degrees Celsius, how can have all this alternative life there, let's put it this way. Because people only think that, for example, on the coastlines where all the animals are and all that. But if you go in, most of it, it's like you say, it's a barren desert. But if you keep walking, you're going to find stuff. So that's highly interesting to see. But like I say, you more than anyone else knows that you have been there, so you have seen it. So that's the very interesting thing of knowing your opinion about it. Okay, so let's go to our other question. What do you need in order to go to Antarctica? What special skills, what studies, what degrees? Because Antarctica is not a place for everyone, for the average Joe. So what do you need to be selected?
Yeah, I would think number one, you need enthusiasm and an adventurous spirit. You can't have a fear of the unknown. I think you've got to be mentally strong and somewhat physically fit. That's, I would say, the first thing. Then there are actually many different jobs that you can do in Antarctica. Although, we are doing all of the science. And so, you know, we need research or people that have research experience and people that have engineering and technical experience to run the observational systems and to gather the data and to process the data. But there are lots of other jobs that, you know, they need to get done in Antarctica, you know, to support all of the infrastructure that we have as well. So they're actually a lot of different people that I've met in the various programs that come from a variety of work backgrounds. We've got mechanics, you know, electricians, mechanical engineers, doctors, chefs, people, you know, that, you know, just do sort of like, you know, more menial jobs like cleaning and, you know, making sure that, you know, the waste is all being processed correctly. We've got people that work on the ship, of course, you know, like all the different positions on the ship. We've got pilots that fly small planes and helicopters. We've got firefighters that come and support them to make sure, you know, that everybody stays safe. So there's actually a lot of different people with a lot of different jobs that's coming, you know, to Antarctica. We've had journalists and film crews join us on expeditions before. You know, I'm just trying to think. We've got students that come down as well that are sort of either working as research assistants or volunteers on some of the projects. So that's part of human capital development, like human capacity building. Yeah, I'm starting to think of more, but yeah, you'll be surprised what opportunities, you know, for jobs you can find for going to Antarctica. It's just, you know, like a pity that sort of we are only limited to, you know, between 80 and 100 people at our base. Otherwise, I'm sure there would be a lot sort of more sort of people, you know, that would be willing to come. But yeah, sadly, you know, we're limited to this small number. But of course, you know, the other bases are around, you know, so we get to meet lots of people from, you know, other countries as well, you know, that want to come and visit us. And we sometimes go and visit them at those bases. And it's interesting to sort of hear the stories, you know, like of sort of how, you know, like how the different people came to be there and sort of, you know, if they were researchers, you know, what they, you know, their research interests were, like, you know, why did they decide to do Antarctic science, you know, but yeah, there's always sort of this common theme that comes up, and that's sort of this adventurous spirit. They just wanted to do something that was, you know, completely different, that was taking them to a unique environment. And yeah, they do it for the love, like they do it for the passion of Antarctica. You know, once you go there one time, then, you know, it's permanently sort of cemented into your psyche, you know, and many people, even after their first trip, it's all they can think about is just going back again and continuing and stuff. So I've met a lot of people as well that have, you know, made this, you know, their life. And, you know, when I started in 2011, you know, I was just a contractor. I was just an engineer that was going to Antarctica for 1 year. And now it's 10 years later and I'm still involved, you know, maybe not so much sort of boots on the ground, but, you know, from like a management and a strategy point of view, I'm still involved because it's still something that I'm so passionate about. And, you know, and I want to make sure, you know, that we continue, you know, our future projects and our future activities, like in the best way possible, you know. So it's still very close to my heart, and I want to see it, you know, be successful, you know, long after my footprints have faded in the snow.
Gotcha. Okay, Jonathan, I just want to add two questions, which because now that we are talking, they are popping up, and I think they are very interesting to ask. The Marion and the Gough Islands, what they are exactly for?
So, yeah, so basically under the SANAP, Gough Island and the Marion Island expeditions are sort of essentially the same, are there for essentially the same purposes. There's sort of a great scientific importance to both areas. So if you look at the Southern Ocean, it's a very large area of our planet that has very little landmass, you know. So from a strategic point of view, sort of any landmass like or island, you know, that you can sort of maintain a presence in will sort of add a lot of value, you know. So yeah, the science that can be done is obviously very like unique in the sense that sort of it's an area that doesn't get a lot of human access. If sort of one has to look at Gough Island, for example, in terms of the weather, it's extremely important because sort of the cold fronts that pass over the Atlantic towards South Africa, that start coming towards South Africa, all have to pass Gough Island first. So strategically, again, it's very important for studying the weather and for observing the weather. For space science, Gough Island is very nice because we are close to what we call the South Atlantic magnetic anomaly, which is an area over the Atlantic Ocean where the Earth's magnetic field is measured to be the weakest. And this, you know, gives rise to some very interesting things that we can measure. So by putting instruments on Gough Island, our proximity to the South Atlantic magnetic anomaly, again, affords us a very unique scientific platform to do that sort of kind of science. Marion Island is very interesting for the same reasons for SANSA and for South African Weather Services, but there's a lot more science that's and research that's done on Marion Island than anywhere else in the SANAP. There are more projects running on Marion Island in the SANAP, and that's because of the unique environment of Marion Island. So there's a lot of research being done on the study of birds, of whales, seals, you know, like all the fauna and flora of Marion Island. And of course, again, it's another very pristine environment, which, you know, we have to very carefully manage in terms of, you know, what we bring in and what we take out from the island, you know. So, you know, a lot of the research that sort of is being done on sort of is sort of on how sort of human presence on Marion Island is affecting, you know, the ecosystems, you know, how the weather patterns are changing over time due to climate change, things like that. Yeah, so from a scientific point of view, Marion Island is a great place to do science as well. And of course, we've got a very nice base. South Africa has a very nice base on Marion Island as well, which is equipped, you know, to handle all of these different science experience. And of course, the island, because it's not covered in ice, you can actually walk around there. And so we've got little huts, you know, that are located all around the island, which researchers and people can stay in and do research away from the base as well. Yeah. So yeah, you're like there's a little bit more freedom to move around on Marion Island. And of course, because there's so much more science being done, the expeditions are a little bit bigger. So I think there can be over 20 people staying there for a year. Whereas in Antarctica, it's only 9 people staying for a year. And Gough people, I think it's maybe 6 staying for a year. So in terms of just the size and the scale, the Marion Island is probably the biggest.
Perfect. Okay, Jonathan, now I need to understand. So you mentioned already that there are 2 ways we can go to Antarctica, which is boat and airplane. How long does it take a plane trip and how long it takes a boat trip to Antarctica?
Okay, so obviously if you fly, it's a lot quicker. So the last time I flew, it was about a 5-6 hour flight, but it ends up being a lot longer because you have to wait for the weather. So yeah, you are waiting more time than what you're actually flying. So I know a lot of people that have taken flights that's been very frustrated because, you know, they think they're going to leave on Saturday, and then on Saturday morning they'll get a call saying, sorry, we're not leaving on Saturday, the weather's not good, like we'll look again on Sunday. And then on Sunday it's the same thing. So then maybe on Tuesday they decide, okay, now the weather's good enough to fly. And then because the weather's got to be good enough to land and then to turn around and come back. Yeah. So the flights very much depend on the weather and sort of and your pocket. So flying there is not cheap because obviously there are not a lot of flights to and from Antarctica. There also only a small number of runways in the Droning Moorland area of Antarctica in which South Africa has its base that can land an aeroplane that's large enough to fly from Cape Town to Antarctica. So this is limited to runways at the Norwegian base at Troll and at the Russian base at Novo. Yeah. So yeah, it'll take you 5 hours in the air, so both ways, and then an unspecified amount of time waiting on the ground on either end to get there and to get back. So I prefer going by ship. It's a lot more reliable in terms of the dates of travel. But yeah, this can take anywhere from 11 days to 1 month. I've been on voyages that it took us, I think, maybe 11 days to get from Cape Town to the ice shelf. But I've also been on expeditions where we've been stuck in the ice for 2.5 weeks, and then it's taken 1 month. So it very much, the success of your voyage very much depends on the conditions of the ice. Yeah, some years the ice can be very thick. Other years it can be a little bit thinner, and so your progress is a lot faster. But generally, you know, by starting the expedition sort of around the last week of November or in the first week of December, then you stand the best chance of making a fast voyage. If you leave a little bit too soon, then you run the risk that you run into some very thick ice that hasn't had a chance to melt yet. Yeah.
Oh my God, I can imagine. Okay, Jonathan, to have an idea, you already mentioned that Antarctica is the size, it's a continent. So if we put the US inside of Antarctica, the Antarctica will be bigger. So knowing there are more than 50 bases around Antarctica, do you guys actually meet other people there? Because you already mentioned that they come to you guys drink probably during the weekend or stuff like that. How far apart are the bases, to have an idea? Of course, this can vary, the distances, but how can you just drive to a base from another country, or how it works?
Right. Yeah, so you're absolutely right in terms of the size and the scale. A lot of people don't realize Antarctica. I think it's the 5th largest continent. It's bigger than Australia. It's bigger than the US. Yeah, it's a big place. So yeah, although there are many bases, they are fairly well spaced out. And of course, travel between bases is difficult without the ability to fly. So we're very fortunate that at the South African base, we have the ability to land small aircraft, and we've got 2 heli hangars as well. So we can accommodate up to 2 helicopters at the base as well. So our ability to travel to other bases is essentially limited by the distance that the helicopters and the small aircraft can fly, and and also the money that it would cost to fly around to the different bases. So the bases that we visit the most are actually the bases that we are able to travel to overland. And the closest base to the South African base is the German base at Neumayer 3, where South Africa also has what we call a summer station. It's a smaller base closer to the coast, which we sort of use sort of, as the name implies, mainly during the summer for some extra space, and also to sort of manage logistics if the ship needs to offload on that side. Yeah, so when doing cargo logistics, we obviously want to try and get the cargo as close as possible to the SANAE base, so that when we have to travel with it over land, it doesn't take us too long. But sometimes we have to do logistics in a different place, which is why we've got which is why we have the summer station. But this also means that we're only 12 kilometers away from the German base once we're at the summer station. So I would say the majority of our interaction with other bases is with the German base, Neumayer 3, and then the Norwegian base at Troll, I think, is a 50-minute helicopter flight. Yeah, and this is also one of the bases that we use the runway if we're flying. Yeah. Then the Russian base at Nova, which I also mentioned earlier, also has a runway, and that is also within flying distance, but in a small plane. Yeah. So just thinking, I never mentioned how long it takes. Yeah. So to travel overland from the South African base to the German base, it's just under 300 kilometers. It can take, it's about realistically 30 hours.
Sure. If it
traveling at about 10 kilometers an hour. That's probably the average speed, yeah.
If it was like average speed on the highway with 300 kilometers, will be what, 3 hours? Wow. Just that to understand how difficult things are in Antarctica. Okay, last question, this is very important. People must think that Antarctica is a lawless land, but this is not true, correct? So what I mean with this is, like Jonathan said, is you can't leave garbage in Antarctica. What can happen if you do that?
Okay, so like I mentioned before, it's not completely lawless. So there's a treaty that governs all activities in Antarctica, and that's the Antarctic Treaty. And South Africa is a signatory of the Antarctic Treaty. That means that sort of we have to abide by what is in the treaty, and that the other signatures of the treaty then hold each other accountable. So the way that sort of we police this is that sort of the members of the Antarctic Treaty meet regularly around these issues about preserving the environment, making sure that the activities that are taking place are within the limits of the treaty, et cetera, et cetera. And they also, conduct regular visits on each other's bases during the summer periods. Yeah. So since I've been involved, I think I've witnessed at least 3 different inspections of the base, by sort of other countries, and usually they'll actually get together, and so you might have sort of representatives from more than one country come at the same time to do the sort of inspections, and they then sort of make sure that your base is not contaminating the ice, that you're processing your waste properly, that the sewage system is not ejecting any effluent that's contaminated, that sort of thing. And sort of, I suppose, the way that, we sort of hold each other responsible is that it's very difficult to have a presence in Antarctica without the cooperation of the other treaty members. So if you are doing something that's not in compliance, then they are not going to want to cooperate with you going forward. and that means that sort of it's going to make things very challenging, for you. For example, if you were using Cape Town as a gateway city to Antarctica for your logistics, your logistics vessel would then no longer be welcome in Cape Town. So you would have to then try and make a plan to go via another city, or you would have to resupply, all the way back in your home country, which of course would be much more expensive. Yeah. So these are obviously ways that, one can enforce it, but I haven't heard of any sort of major incidents where sort of they've, been, these type of disagreements, with regards to, the treaty obligations and things like that. When you are sort of your base, then basically the law of your country then applies.
That's exactly my question.
So if you commit a crime in Antarctica, then when you get back to South Africa, you will be charged with that crime under South African law. I'm not too familiar what would happen to someone from a foreign country that was in a South African base that committed a crime, whether that person then would have to go to South Africa for a crime. But I suppose it depends on the severity of the crime. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of crime.
Very controlled.
Yeah, because before, we do expeditions, obviously, we make sure that the people that are appointed to the position are sort of the caliber that they sort of are very unlikely to commit crime.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Finally, just last one, which is, I know that during winter it's completely dark, but imagine there is an emergency. What happens?
Okay, so to mitigate the risk of emergencies and things like that, we have rigorous safety measures all around the base. The team that overwinter, for example, they trained in first aid, they trained in firefighting, they trained in survival techniques, and there's always a doctor on the base. So even the overwintering team has a doctor that's trained to deal with medical emergencies. The base has a medical facility, like medical rooms for the doctor, including dental. And there's actually an operating theater as well on the base that's equipped for medical procedures and things like that. So I would say, apart from, the most sort of life-threatening medical emergencies, the base is equipped to deal with, any sort of medical care that needs to be carried out. But however, things do happen, emergencies do happen. And there are several options. For example, you could call upon assistance from another base, for example, to come and help if there's an emergency situation. We can contact medical professionals sort of in South Africa or abroad to get advice on sort of what to do and how to handle a certain medical emergency, or we can repatriate the patient. But as I mentioned earlier, this is obviously limited to the constraints of the season and the weather. So you're right, there are certain times of the year that repatriation due to a medical emergency is not viable. And in that case, it's obviously, very dangerous, and the patient may not then have a good outcome. Yeah, but that's the reality, and sort of the people that sort of, join the expeditions are sort of aware that risk exists. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I guess all my questions are okay. You replied to everything. So I don't know if you want to add anything else, or how people can find more about your work and all that.
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to know more about what is happening, within the South African National Antarctic Program, you can visit the website sanap.ac.za. If you want to learn a little bit more about SANSA and what SANSA is doing, you can visit our webpage as well, sansa.org.za, and see sort of all of the activities that we're doing. There are a lot of projects that we have going on, especially student projects. We offer bursaries, to postgraduate students. So if you are studying science, engineering, mathematics, there's obviously opportunities for you, to study space science. If you are able to visit the Hermanus area in the Western Cape, we do offer tours of the facility where we show everybody what we're doing and explain a little bit more about the science. Those happen on Wednesdays at 11. And you can contact us via the webpage to arrange for tours.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's very nice to hear that. I didn't know that was actually able to be done. So I'm looking forward to do something like that. Okay, Jonathan, thank you so much once again. I really appreciate your time. Guys, this was another Living in SATV podcast. Feel free to share, subscribe, destroy that like button, and see you in the next Living in SATV podcast.
Okay, I hope you guys now know or have a better idea of how it is living at the SANAE base in Antarctica. I learned a lot. I don't know about you guys. Anyway, smash, destroy the like button, make sure you share this amazing video, and see you in the next Living SATV video.